Welcome to Monthly Mastery, Episode 8. We'll continue exploring how to read and interpret clinical evidence, an essential part of validating the safety and efficacy of new devices or therapies in our field. As we enter the next adoption cycle, we will encounter an increasing early majority audience, If you remember from earlier videos and from Crossing the Chasm, early majority profiles require a reproducible workflow and evidence demonstrating its clinical value. Our learning objectives today are: distinguish between primary and secondary literature, understand the 7 sections of a journal article and their purposes, develop an efficient, methodical approach to review. Generally, clinical articles are categorized into primary and secondary literature. Primary literature contains original research data, authored by researchers, and is often published in peer-reviewed journals, conference papers, or preliminary reports. They present new scientific discoveries or contextualize new findings in relation to previous work. Examples include original research articles, surveys, case reports, editorials, and interim posters. Secondary literature interprets and evaluates primary literature. It summarizes, generalizes, and integrates new research within each discipline. Examples include meta-analyses, systematic reviews, reference works, and textbooks. Now let's explore the structure of clinical articles, typically divided into title, abstract, introduction, methods, results, discussion, conclusion, and references. The title simplifies the paper's content, outlining the study, the variables studied, and the methods used. The abstract is a concise summary, usually no more than 200 words, encapsulating the key points of the paper. It should be comprehensible independently of the main text. The introduction provides the study's rationale, contextualizes the research within existing knowledge, identifies gaps in the literature, and explains how these inspired the new study. The methods section details all experimental procedures and variables, including mathematical equations. The results section presents data trends objectively, detailing statistical test outcomes. Data often features in tables or figures, with textual explanations aiding comprehension. The discussion section analyzes the data, relating it to other studies. It addresses the research questions, interprets the data, and compares the findings to other studies, highlighting differences or similarities. Strengths and limitations of the study are discussed, along with suggestions for future research. The conclusion restates the thesis, summarizes key arguments, and shows how they contribute to supporting or disproving the thesis. Lastly, references cites the literature used, which is self-explanatory. Clinical studies can seem daunting at first glance. Let's simplify them. Remember, there's no definitive right or wrong way to read a clinical paper. What we suggest are best practices and guidelines. It's crucial to read intentionally and actively, as clinical papers are dense and require focused attention. Here are a few strategies to become a proactive reader when reviewing a clinical paper. Take notes and highlight important sections. Summarizing information in your own words makes it easier to understand. Highlight key areas for subsequent reads and jot down any questions for further research. Conduct self-check-ins, regularly verify your understanding of the material. Quiz yourself with questions like who are the authors? This ensures that you're assimilating the information, not merely reading. Be alert to trigger words. Authors use certain words to emphasize important points. For example, surprising, unexpected, in contrast, has seldom been addressed. We hypothesize/propose/introduce, the data suggests. No key paragraphs. Some paragraphs house critical information. In the introduction, the first paragraph describes the problem, and the third outlines the study's aim and endpoint. In the results section, data is presented by importance. The first and last paragraphs of the discussion summarize the study's rationale, findings, strengths, and weaknesses. Before you start reading, ask yourself, what question am I trying to answer? This helps you focus on the relevant points. When reviewing a clinical paper, start with a broad overview to grasp the main points. We recommend the 3-pass approach. Read the paper thrice, with each pass serving a different purpose. The first pass gives a general overview, the second delves deeper, and the third focuses on specific details. This approach helps you transition from understanding the overall concepts to the fine nuances of the paper. The first pass is a swift skim of the paper. Go through section headings, essential paragraphs, and the introduction and discussion beginnings and endings. This helps identify the significant sections and provides a rough reading order. This pass should take no more than 10 minutes. The second pass involves a careful reading without getting lost in minutiae. Here, you'll pay special attention to graphs and summary of findings, jot down detailed notes, and highlight key sections. Also, list down questions you may have. This pass typically takes about an hour. The third pass requires meticulous attention. Consider how you'd paraphrase the article. Delve into the methods section and review the discussion thrice. Now examine the abstract. It's a rapid way to determine the study's relevance to your objective. The abstract answers key questions about the study's purpose, methods, results, and conclusions. The abstract and title should provide enough insight to ascertain if the study answers your question. Also ask yourself, do I have the knowledge to read this paper, or will I need to learn more before tackling the article? Once you've confirmed the paper's relevance, it's time to delve into the substance. Starting with the abstract and title is a common approach to reviewing a clinical paper. Since these papers are read non-linearly, find an approach that suits you best. Some researchers start with a conclusion to understand the research outcome. Reading this section first can enhance comprehension. After the conclusion, revisit the introduction and scrutinize it 3 times, focusing on the paper's aims and objectives. This section will also be home to the author's hypothesis. Do not move past the introduction section until you can answer the paper's what, why, how. Make sure you take note of the hypothesis and have a firm understanding of the paper's objective. Then, turn to the results section. Examine the tables and figures for data relevant to your objective. Summarize. The discussion section is crucial as it answers the research questions and interprets the data. Take a methodical approach and note down key details. As previously discussed, paragraph 1 and the final paragraph having the most relevant information. The intermediate paragraph provides more context to paragraph 1 and sets up the last paragraph by detailing the author's experience during the study. Adverbs in this section often signal significant information. Lastly, revisit the conclusion 3 times. Initially, read it to understand the study's endpoint. During the second pass, align the results with the conclusion. On the third pass, you should be able to recall the conclusion.